Good morning. I'd like to call the Executive Committee meeting Tuesday, June 22nd to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Lear?
Present.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Polk?
Present.
Ms. Weber?
Present.
Mr. Payton? Ms. Parker?
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Present.
Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Carrico?
Present.
Mr. Featherling?
Present.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Long?
Present.
Mr. Hunter?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Seroy?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to allow Dr. Polk to attend via Zoom? Mr. Hunter, second. Mrs. Parker, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Welcome to the meeting, Dr. Polk.
Thank
Morning.
you.
At the full board, we'll do that for one final time to cover all committees and everything, and we won't have to do that again for Dr. Polk. So, we have public comment. Let's see here, 15 minutes in total. Have Marta Perales from Moments. Back at the mic there, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am here to speak about the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission. I attended the meeting last week and was actually surprised to see a couple of things that I wanted to bring up to this executive board, and especially since there are a number of vacancies on the commission itself. What I found was that there were, for more than a year and a half, there's been a lack of quorum. So unfortunately, minutes have not been able to be accepted because there has been a lack of attendance from some of the members. Upon looking at who was actually on the list itself, I noticed there were 2 new members. There were realtors. I looked at the rest of the board, and it's mostly developers and realtors, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a firm believer in the MPO process. You know, there is a public participation level that I'm extremely keen to at this point, because the way MPOs are funded. In case the public doesn't know, MPOs are funded in every area over $50,000, and it's based on population. And there has been MPOs who've lost their MPO status because they fell below that 50,000, like in Danville about 10 years ago. I say that because of the significance of what you guys are doing and what the commission is doing. They actually passed their 5-year plan at this meeting, and there was no public participation. I didn't know about it. There's always improvements, and that's why I speak out. It's always an opportunity to look for improvements. You know, there's always gaps in policy, no matter how good you are. It's good to have a consensus and diversity in what you're doing, because people can bring out that experience and show you where you can improve on. The reason why I wanted to bring up the 2 people that were recently appointed was because they had not attended any of those meetings. And especially at a time when we're trying to get a quorum, you appoint somebody who doesn't even attend it. It's a lack of respect in some circles. What I'd also noticed that there was somebody on the board, on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission, who was there for the first time, who actually lives in Arizona. And I was quite shocked I know they have a family connection here to Kankakee County, but I have also known this person that lived in Arizona for a while and is a big-time real estate developer out there. And I'm wondering why they're on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission, especially since there's so many vacancies out there. I did check into the bylaws and was surprised to see that if someone's not able to serve and misses more than 3 consecutive unexcused absences from regular scheduled meetings by an appointee, they can be replaced. And I say that because I know it's been discussed here in terms of the number of vacancies on there. And from my understanding, what I've been hearing is that, yes, their term expired, but we're just waiting for them to resign. And according to your bylaws, you don't have to wait for people to resign from those positions to get people on that commission. On my last note, I did want to say, in full disclosure, I did about a year ago apply for the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission. I did not want to apply. Unfortunately, this person heard my experience. I was the MPO statewide coordinator here in Illinois. I did work with 14 MPOs throughout the state. We did provide a forum for the sharing of best practices and information. So if DeKalb was doing a bike plan, guess what? Danville's like, hey, we got one rolled up. You can look at it, see how we did, how we included the public, how we looked at issue A, B, C. Here's our ADA stuff. So it can be done. So I'm I'm here just because I am concerned. I'm concerned about the lack of attendees, and if we're going to be spending all this money on transportation infrastructure, we need the public to participate in the attendance to be on there. From my understanding, what we've always been told is that transportation is not a Democratic value or a Republican value. We all want good roads in our community. We all want safe sidewalks, strong streetlights, safe police departments. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Is there a motion for the approval of minutes of May 25th, 2021? Mr. Long and Ms. Polk with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. No presentations under legislative. Mr. Lear, did you have anything today? Thank you, sir. I had a couple of things, just to I want to say some highlights. We've seen some of the lowlights that we've had to deal with from the legislative session in Springfield. Obviously, you know, we're waiting on the governor to sign the natural gas bill for Hopkins Park. If you know anybody, urge the governor to sign that bill so we can get the ball rolling. Then we're working on getting it from the pipeline into the House now. That's the next step. We've already applied for a grant to do so, but this is one of the most longer-term grant non-response periods that I think I've been part of. Would you agree, Ben? It's been a long time, and we still don't have an answer when that might be coming up for review or anything. So more to come, but I just can't say when on that. There's also curbside voting was made permanent, allowing voters to be put on a list of individuals who wish to permanently vote by mail. That was passed, allowing county sheriffs to set up ballot booths at county jails. Creating a pilot program to allow election authorities to establish at least one location for anyone in the county or municipality to vote on election day, centralized voting. So that all passed. Let's see here. House Bill 562 was something I made note of because originally it was mandatory fingerprinting for FOID cards. That was negotiated out during the veto process, if you will, and so it's not going to have mandatory fingerprinting, but individuals who submit a voluntary fingerprint will have the ability to get a non-expiring FOID card. So, you know, for convenience, they're kind of pacifying the removal of our rights by the federal Constitution. So, thanks for nothing, really. House Bill 562 now heads to the governor's desk, so maybe at least sign that so people who haven't broken the law don't have to be fingerprinted. Unbelievable. The fall veto session is scheduled for October 19th through 21st and October 26th through 28th. The process there, we could see some things that went on the scrap pile get brought back to life. Miraculously, that happens sometimes. One of concern is a bill by Senator Sims that will allow for mobile homes just to be plopped anywhere in the county without any type of zoning regulation. That is a major problem for schools and for policing and everything else in the rural areas of the county. I don't see a limitation on people doing that within cities. Maybe home rule cities can enact something against that, but it could be anywhere. I think it's a horrible idea because you get no more than $150 on a mobile home. How does that pay for the infrastructure to support that? Police, water, fire, schools. So in areas like that was being targeted for this in Pembroke Township, it could have a lethal effect on the school district. It's absolutely awful. So hopefully that won't get resurrected, but I have a feeling it will. So we're bird dogging that one and a few others. So that's all I had on legislative. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you give me the second session dates for the veto session?
Yeah, it was, I apologize here. I set that aside. It was October, it was the 19th, 21st, and then 26th through 28th.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any others? I'm sorry, I thought I saw a hand over here. Nope. Okay, moving on. IS, Kevin, did you have anything today? Nothing? If you want.
Nothing material. As usual, we are on budget. We are working on the same projects that I've talked about before. As I said, normally I just give you a quarterly update. Our main summer project is working on backups and updating those backup sequence. We have our existing one in effect. This is in the weeds. You don't probably care about this stuff. And we're upgrading it to a newer format. Been somewhat delayed because we have a major department that's trying to upgrade their servers, which slows up everything. But everything's working properly as expected. Again, we are on budget. We're working on some of the projects that the chairman announced at the previous meeting. That's going to take a little bit of a while to do properly and officially, but we're moving forward with those projects. I don't want to go into detail until it's time to do that.
Let's talk about the tablets, you know, for the board. So that's kind of, we have some work to do there, so. Is that okay, Ms. Polk?
Yeah.
It'll be a little while, I apologize, but we've got some reformatting to do on those, if you will.
Yes, there's reformatting, and we need to officially make sure they become in an asset database, and since they're a proper way to do it, and we used to do things years ago, but things are more modern now, and we want to make sure before we issue stuff that's done the way that it's supposed to be done, and it can be tracked, and that everything's above board, so we're doing the right way. So. And I'm giving options to the chairman so he can say, I'd rather you do it this way or that way.
Yeah, we'll bring it back. We're just not going to do it. The main thing is are we going to run these from an enterprise server where we control in-house, which is probably the best way to go about this, or if there's individual licenses. That becomes problematic because Apple has their own rules. Our rules don't matter to Apple. So it's they kind of call all the shots because they're the ones who determine what goes on that iPad. You don't. So it's just like the mouse. We laugh. Mickey Mouse controls a lot. So does the Apple.
We also don't want to pass on any county liability to you as individual board members. So if we're going to give the asset, we want to make sure we're covering everything.
Exactly. It's just not as easy as here it is. You know, we've got some work to do. So thanks, Kevin.
But it can only be, excuse me,
Yes,
it can
Dr.
only be used for county board business, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, you can research issues, you know, obviously you can go browse the interwebs and look up something, you know, but it can't be for anything other than county business.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
To that point, we would push the apps out. It would be approved apps only on this device, and there has to be an ability to monitor that. So in case any legal body says, do you have these controls in place? We must say, yes, we do. Mm-hmm. And there's only a single process. There aren't multiple ways to do that, so we need to go through that.
Sure.
Cool. Okay.
All right. So thank you for that, Kevin. Health Department's not here today. John had another engagement, I guess.
Boston, didn't he?
Might be vacation engagement.
Boston. Yeah.
I'd say he's probably earned one at some point. The VAC, do we have a monthly report in the packet, I believe? Is there a motion on that? Do we have their monthly report in the packet? Yeah, here it is. A motion to put that on file. Mr. Kinzinger, second, Mrs. Weber. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Yes, Ms. Weber, did you have a question? I apologize.
Thank you. I just talked with the office about the gifting tree that's mentioned in the first page of their report, and she showed me that it's right inside the door on the wall. And right now, there's a need for a dining room table and chairs and a lift chair. They've already been able to give shoes and socks and a full-size bed to somebody. So if someone has a need, they come and put the leaf on the tree with their need. If somebody has it, they come take the leaf and provide it. So it's a really good way to provide what's needed for help. So it's just right inside the door when you walk in there.
Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on. County Administrator Report. Anita Speckman.
Good morning. It's going to be quick, don't worry. I really just have a couple quick things I want to update you on. The first was last month I talked about work comp cases and the current cases that are with our current carrier, and I told you there was we were trying to get information about the lagging claims that are still open for our carrier that we terminated our contract with December 31st of 2018. There are 3 lagging claims on that. 2 were for very serious injuries. One, our employee was out for 2.5 years and is back at work and has been back at work for 1.5 years. They're leaving it open in case something happens. The second is a permanent injury that that claim will stay open. And the third is a claim that our insurance company denied from the onset and is in litigation, both for hearing. The employee was later terminated, so we have a hearing coming up hopefully this summer sometime regarding with work comp on the claim. The employment issue, I think that's kind of heating up as well, that may be, with everything with COVID, everything kind of stopped for a year, so that may be coming up in the near future too. We've had a few meetings on that one as well. So 3 claims out there, 2 that'll probably stay open for quite some time, 1 that may be resolved within the next few months. So the second thing was, I'm not sure how many of you saw our huge 1-page ad trying to get applicants. That recruitment has been a struggle. At the time, we had about 20 openings, which is unheard of at the county. We currently have 9, but the ads, the postings for 2 and highway have been there since March 16th. And we get very, very few applicants. We've had a grant writer here in administration since April 23rd. The few applicants we see, 1 or 2 applications, have absolutely no relevant experience that don't even meet the requirements of an interview. So we continue to struggle, as many people do, just trying to get applicants. Those we do are really not relevant to the positions that are open. In fact, one of the highway positions, Mr. Rogers shared with me this morning, they're just going to take it down and wait a few months. You know, we have multiple rounds of reposting, and we're just not seeing a lot of activity.
Mr. Seroy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Beckman, thank you for bringing this up. And while we maybe have the ear to the governor, it would be nice if he would rescind the extra unemployment benefit that is probably causing people not to seek employment because they can make more money by not working than they can by working. You're not the only entity. I believe there are many businesses in this community that cannot open full hours, have to close their doors early because they might only have 1 staff or short-staffed, and they're it is troublesome as an employer. And you know that you cannot get an employee, and I think we're training people to be reliant on the government instead of going out and doing their own thing. So thank you for bringing that up, because that has been weighing on my mind also. I don't know what the opinion of this committee is, but I think it's ridiculous that we're giving $300 extra to somebody to not work.
It is interesting. I did get a monthly magazine yesterday from SHRM, which is Society for Human Resources Managers, and the cover article is "Prepare for the tsunami of turnover." So what they're predicting is sometime in the near future that there will be a tremendous amount of employees leaving their current employer, and the number 1 issue cited was more of a work-life balance after the issues with COVID. So we haven't seen that yet. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We feel that somewhere that, you know, obviously we can help or meet somebody's needs. So,
I have seen other employers in the area doing the full pages now.
yes, I have too.
Yeah, I've
Yep.
noticed that. So it's not, we were the first like that to do it, but I mean, it's school districts, the whole deal. It's all over the place and nobody can find anybody. It's amazing. And ours are like pension benefits, you know, it's not, you know, burger flipping money, but it's not, you know, house in the Hamptons money either, but still it's a living, you know, it's a consistent, just unbelievable. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
That's all I had, unless anyone has any other questions or concerns? Nope. Mr. Featherling?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes.
Anita, do they have, you advertise the salary ranges in those ads, or you just put
Yes.
those jobs up?
No, we put salary ranges in. Any of those out of administration, I feel strongly that it should include a salary range. It's just being fair to applicants, and then you're not spinning your wheels for someone who may not.
Well,
Ever.
those people in that salary range aren't getting that much on unemployment as they would get on their salary, are they?
Yeah.
Unemployment in the state of Illinois is only like $260 a week or something, plus the $300. A grant writer makes a lot more than $560 a week.
Well,
A lot more, don't you think? I mean, I don't know what the salary range you're looking for is.
Well, I'll say in my experience, and I worked recruiting grant writers at my previous position, and like starting pay for grant writers, we do salary studies for everything before we post. They start at $30,000 a year. So at a low end, at a beginning as a starter, that's what you would see. So
Is that a non-experienced person, or is that a college graduate, or?
again, that's a low end. So that's a minimal experience.
Well, if you got a grant writer, don't they bring in, you know, like Andy's talking about the gas and gas valves and all that stuff is done by lobbyists and stuff. Grant writers can bring in lots more than their salaries, can't they?
They can.
Is that a legitimate pay
We've
to
had
start with somebody who can
again,
bring in
that's-
$1 million in revenue in a year or two in grants that only pay them $36,000 a year?
I'm telling you what the market
That's
studies
what the
show.
market study. I didn't know, because it seems to me
Yeah.
that village administrators are making $150,000 a year, and superintendents of schools are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and they don't apply for grants and do that kind of stuff. They just sit there and take care of all their problems that they have all day long.
Yeah.
But a grant writer can bring in, they don't bring any money in. The superintendent of schools doesn't bring money in.
I
The
use
school board does.
Yeah, I do use 3 different websites
Okay.
that do salaries, and I take a look at all 3 and
Okay.
make sure that they're consistent.
So it's like a statewide or Midwest-wide or countrywide?
Well, I use both. All 3 sites that I use are international companies, and I specifically ask for Kankakee County.
Okay.
So I make sure that I'm getting, and then I typically compare that with the state of Illinois just to make sure that we're being competitive. So
Okay. Thank you.
that's
That was-
typically my process. I like to put a lot of research into it just to make sure that we're competitive and that we're current.
Well, if you're on unemployment right now, can you qualify for food stamps and all that other things on top of that then?
I can't answer.
We should probably not, this is
Okay,
going
well, I'm
away
just
from
saying.
the conversation at
Okay.
hand. This is
Okay.
really not
Right.
germane to what we're talking about, so.
Well, I mean,
We can socio-engineer this later.
I just didn't
but
know if she
it's-
I didn't know she was putting salaries in the ads, that's
Yeah,
all.
that's
I
it.
don't see the ads because I don't look at the paper very often. It makes me mad.
Sorry, these speakers went out. I didn't hear that last part. So, no, a point taken, though. It is difficult. And I will say we're not the only ones. And if you're looking for a grant writer, it's like looking. I just want to say, if you're looking for a grant writer, it's like looking for an epidemiologist during a pandemic. It's one of the hardest jobs to hire right now because they can write their own ticket for the people who have delivered. What we were looking for is somebody out of college that may have an English degree that we can partner with an experienced grant writer to learn the ropes, to cut their teeth here. and to help us get in the pipeline. That's kind of what we were being, real with ourselves. We're not going to be able to go get an experienced grant writer because no one would really take a full-time job as a grant writer because you can make more money with 15 clients.
Correct.
So that's kind of why the big hitters are doing that, and the ones who are just starting is what we're looking for. Yep. Writing is the skill set we need. Then we could target that writing skill towards the opportunity. Yeah, let's moving on. Sorry, no, we're good. Are you good?
Yep,
All right,
I'm
thanks.
good.
Administrative issues. Did you put issues in there just to say?
Always had issues.
Really? It always has had issues? All right, sorry. Reappointment of Joe Swanson to the University of Illinois Extension. Reappointment of Paul Kroll to the Pilot Township Fire Protection District. Reappointment of James Nichols to the Kankakee Township Fire Protection District. Reappointment of Antonio Carrico to the Kankakee County Board of Health, and appointment of Lori Gadboy to the Kankakee County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Is there a motion to combine and approve? Mr. Hunter, Mr. Lear, with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed, same sign. Motion carries. A few openings. One opening on all of the following: Raymond Drainage District, Spring Creek Drainage District, Canavan Drainage District, Gar Creek Drainage District, Little Beaver Special Drainage District, McGilvery Special Drainage District, Minnie Creek Drainage District, Moments and Yellowhead Drainage District number 1, Essex Township Fire Protection District, and Zoning Board of Appeals. There's 2 openings on the Kankakee County Board of Health, medical doctors, 3 openings on the Manteno number 9 Drainage District, and 6 openings on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission. I'm just going to ask the question. Del, could you join us for a moment here? Because there's some misinformation said here earlier, and I want to get this cleared up. Because this executive committee, if you don't know the way the Regional Planning Commission works and how it's connected or not connected to the MPO, was there any official connection between the MPO and the Regional Planning Commission?
Official connection?
Official.
No.
Do they do sub-projects for them when asked to do projects?
Yes.
Yes. So there was an inference that the MPO is not being run properly because of the Regional Planning Commission. That couldn't be further from the truth. Is there Arizona residents on the Regional
Not that
Planning
I'm
Commission?
aware of.
This is all news to me. So
Be
I
looking
just
into
want to
that,
get to
but
the committee.
Not that I know of.
That was a kind of a misrepresentation of what's actually going on. So it might have been a bad meeting when there wasn't a lot of people there, but frankly,
Most of the RPC meetings, not a lot of people show up.
Right. So just to let you know, the MPO is functioning at a high level, and we're very coordinated with all the mayors, and the work is getting done. The implication was otherwise that was made. Thanks, Del. Because I was confused during that whole thing. Moving on to a presentation, this whole American Rescue Plan Act and the funds and all of that kind of stuff. Well, it took us a long time to get to the point of, we knew the number, how much was coming our direction, but we didn't know all the strings that were attached. And now we found the strings. We know where some of them are ropes and cables, and are steadfast. Some are a little more liberal in the interpretation. So we wanted to, or at least I wanted to run through this with you and kind of kick off the program, if you will, kick off the initiative, and discuss how I think we should go through the process of both involving the public, going through all the potential policies that we need to address as a board, how you all have the opportunity to be involved as much or as little as you want to be. But initially, I'll explain here in a minute, everybody will have subcommittees. I've spoken with a lot of you individually. Every board member has a subcommittee if they so choose to participate in it. And the initial buckets of the subcommittees were created based on the initial community, intergovernmental, intragovernmental, and other folks that were telling us ideas, things that they thought they needed because of COVID, the response, the revitalization, and the reinvestment in Kankakee County. I came up with that before we actually had the rules, and I got lucky because that's exactly what they want us to do with the money. I had a feeling that's the way it was going from the early indication. So just for the sake of having an initiative to get behind, that was the name that I had come up with, because that really targets our efforts here into three main areas of engagement with and deployment of these funds. So we can go to the next one, if you will. So the overall structure is obviously the board is going to disperse, the 21.6 million. We can go into details. Remember, that's two tranches, half this year, half next year. We've already got the first half in the bank, and then the second half comes next year, roughly the same time period. But they haven't said that for sure, but we kind of think it's going to happen that way. But there's public input at almost every turn. The executive committee, this committee will be the policy committee. So any policies that are developed in the subcommittees that report up through here, you will be voting on, and then pushing that upwards to the full board. So we'll get together policies and have those voted on at the full board level after you approve or reject those policies here. What that allows us to do is to be able to build project pillars underneath those policies that support the overarching policy. It's strange to know how much money you got and go backwards. Usually it's you have a need and you try to fit that into a budgetary constraint. Here here's all this money, you got to spend it in 3 years and figure out what's the best use for it. So in this case, there's a lot of different uses, and one of the policies that I'll end up bringing up to everybody is that I think an overarching policy at the end, we'll go through them all, but is how do you make 2 years of funding have a long-term impact, 10, 20 years? That's what I think one of our goals should be, because the money's finite, the impact can last a lot longer. So if we can go to the next one. So the committee structures are such that I built the initial buckets off of what people were telling me from around county government, around the community. The citizens that I met with, me and Mr. Hunter and I met with a diverse group of stakeholders to kind of throw ideas out there, and there's more to come. We're going to be getting with a lot of these different people. I've met with hospitals. I mean, just to gather, what are you thinking? Where should the county go on this end? Now the board has this opportunity to do that as well within this committee structure, and I've listened to you all as well. So we just had to start from a place of, well, how do I organize this? How do we start wrestling this tiger in a methodical manner? And so the first one, obviously, if you look across, there's a public safety and emergency management bucket. So that's a committee, a courts committee. There's a other one right now. It's just all the other stuff that really didn't have a common theme, but at some point we may get a lot of others that group themselves into another bucket that may spin off into a separate committee that addresses policy for that stuff. And again, under revitalize, we've got to revitalize the workforce and revitalize the business community. And then there's another other bucket over there, because as we get more ideas, they may not fall under those two. So I'm just accounting for that. I wouldn't expect that committee to meet until there's something to meet about. And then the reinvest is basically the infrastructure and the community bucket. It's a larger bucket, probably more capital project oriented. And I could see things migrating from the courts into infrastructure, or from public safety into infrastructure. It just depends on how all this shakes out via the discussions in the committee side of things, or the subcommittee side. So we can move on a little bit. So it's hard for me to read here. Let me grab this in the glare. This is kind of like a flow chart, if you will, though, just a quick and easy. So I started with public and intra and internal governmental input. So I was talking with other mayors, other alder people, trustees, and other areas. Just what's everybody thinking about, and looking for cooperation, and obviously board members and community stakeholders. So the executive subcommittees will be getting together. We're going to set that policy. So again, the policy may be, I'll use an example, under respond in courts. The courts have to respond to this pandemic and other future interruptions in operations that are similar, and space needs issues, proximity, contagion, those types of things. So the policy will be better crafted than what I just said, but it'll have to be something that says, well, here's all these pillars that support the courts being able to deal with this now and in the future. Does that make sense? You don't want to start with the project. You're kind of going backwards then. Start with the policy, and then the projects will support that. Then they'll send that to the executive committee, the policy. There'll be public input there. You will approve it or reject it, amend it maybe, populate, and then rank the initiatives. So if there's any initiatives originally under that bucket, you would rank them as far as the executive committee's purview goes. Then you'll send that to finance committee, excuse me. Now, it's my thought that is the subcommittees just basically turn their hat around, and then they're the finance subcommittee. So we don't have to go into detail. You're versed in what the projects and what the policy is that you've helped develop. So your lens is already honed towards that, particular issue that you're going to be talking about. And then they're going to get some more public input, and then they're going to prioritize. And costing is probably part of the same process, because obviously you would have to cost it and prioritize it, because if something is, hey, we want this and it's $35 million, well, obviously it's not going to get prioritized towards the top, I would say. It may stay on the list, but it may be down towards the bottom. Does that make sense? We're going to try to be as inclusive as possible, and I'll talk about that in a second. Then they'll send those ranked and costed initiatives to the full finance committee. So that subcommittee is going to rank within their own bucket, throw it up to the finance committee, and then they'll put it all together and then reprioritize everything based on that. And then at some point, there's going to be a red line across there that says we're out of money. Okay, so at some point, and then you'll have to take a look at that and say, well, this down here, we really need to figure out how does this get up here. So it's going to be kind of a living, breathing thing, if you will. And again, a marathon, not a sprint. There's time for adjustments to happen. Life will happen. Things may change. We don't know what the state of Illinois is going to do with laws and things like that may change our view on something between now and the third year of this process. So, and then, the public input will come. Finance will approve and reject as the finance committee, and then they will execute it, and the full board will monitor it. The full board has already voted via the budget. Okay, so the full board doesn't need to vote on every single part of this. We've already, because we're lump sum budget, we're not line item budget. Okay, that's the way we do things at the county. So we're not going to go micro. The finance committee and the executive committee and all the board members have all the input on the front end. But in order we establish the budget for this, and then that's where it falls into in the year. Does that make sense? And if we need to, we have to amend the budget. And that requires that 3/4 vote that we talked about, in order to amend the budget. It's 3/4, right, Steve? 2/3. Percentage points. It was close in hand grenades. So that's it. Is there any questions about the process? First of all, do you kind of see where I'm going with this? Public input the whole time through. And that's kind of key. So if you look at public safety, I have designated chair people for these and vice chairs for people to run the meetings. If you don't want that position, then tell me and we'll switch it up. If you're busy and you would rather be part of the committee, but you can't be there, I've just chosen people based on their standing within the committees and things like that. So obviously the public safety EMA, Mr. Hess and Mrs. Parker, but those are the folks that are on there. The citizen advisory, those are non-voting members, but they'd be subject matter experts and people that want to contribute to the conversation. And that could be 10 people long. It could be 5 people long, it could be 1 or none. It's however many people want to get involved in the process. It could be, heck, we could have rotating people. We could get 3 or 4 police chiefs in here one day from around the community. I don't know. I'm leaving this open-ended to see where it's going to go. And not limit anything. I'm just trying to build the machine where the product can be worked out. And again, potential projects for the public safety EMA, we've talked about a rec area out at JCDC. That was primarily for our ICE detainees. We would like to try to invest in our local thing, but the state just took $5 million away from us. So that one will have to have some hard decisions, but that was originally in the bucket. The environmental stuff, the air purification systems, the coroner's request. We had one for a walk-in freezer because he had to rent something when we got into that situation before, with so many fatalities in a short period of time. The tech upgrades for the courts, so we don't have to shuttle people back and forth. But again, there's a COVID reason for that. We don't want them in the cars together if there's another outbreak. It's things like that. Take advantage of technology. You invest in technology, it solves that problem, but it also takes 2 years of money and has a longer term impact. Make sense? So those are the things we'll talk about and debate within the community structure. The word bounty for vaccine is not necessarily the best word, but maybe it's an incentive. You know, it's we can figure out a way. Do we want to take a chunk of money and say, well, here's 50 grand we'll set aside for, and we'll pay, I don't know, $20 a person to go get a vaccine who hasn't been vaccinated, and maybe $5 per person if somebody wants to fill up a bus full of people, if it's a church who wants to do it, just to try to get people vaccinated that want to participate in the program. So that's up to them. They don't have to, but if we think we need to get that number up, maybe that's something the committee decides to do. So that's just a couple of thoughts to kick it off. And then, but again, what would be the policy that would support all of that? We need to make sure that our court systems, or in this case, our jail and public safety apparatus that we have in the county is cognizant and prepared to deal with COVID and other contagion now and going forward. That might be the policy that allows projects to be lined up underneath it. Does it make sense, kind of the way I put it? All right. Otherwise, we'll just spend our times going through projects, I think, over and over again, and they may not be connected in any way to an overarching policy. So under respond again, under the courts, and we'll go through those. I had Mr. Long and Mr. Fairfield running that one. But Mr. Featherling, Seroy, Eckhoff, and then the Citizen Advisory would be part of that as well. So you got drafted, sorry. It happens. So again, and if this is, I don't want to say more liberal in interpretation, if you can't be there and somebody else could run the meeting for you, you know, it's not an official like appointment. I just need a point person to actually run the committee and know that we have that connection point. Again, potential projects, we got a backlog in the courts, we got environmental issues, circuit clerk space needs, traffic courts, court management system, if we've heard from the chief judge. Those are a lot of big things over in the courts. Those may end up moving from here over to Capitol based on some of those solutions that would present themselves. Maybe not. So we're just mentioning that. Under respond, if we go to the next one. Other projects, again, this is the catch-all. The county clerk voting machines, something we're going to talk about tomorrow. That exists outside of this, and I won't get into the technical details of what bucket of money it's going to come from. I'm not going to steal Steve's thunder tomorrow, but we know that we're going to be able to pay for these voting machines out of the lost revenue fund, and he'll explain why later. But normally that would have gone through the process of going through the subcommittees. We need to get those on order. That's why we had to pull that out. Because of lead times, you don't know how long the slow boat is going to be to get here, because I'm sure that all the parts aren't made here in the United States anymore, just like most things. So we have to make sure that we get these on order and in-house when the time comes. So, but again, that's existing outside of the current process, but normally it would come to the committee first and say, this is a pressing need. Now, if it's a pressing need and it's immediate, you can kick it up to the executive committee for approval on that project by itself. So voting machines and poll pads would have been one we said, yes, let's approve that, let's kick that up, and then we'll move it over to finance and then let them approve it at that point. So the policy would be is alleviating the negative impacts of COVID and any future pandemics on the election process. That would be a policy. Well, how do you mitigate that? Well, through the voting machines with document feeders and other things that we need to do going forward. So that's just one leg of that pillar under there. You know, we obviously got the housing, the homelessness, the evictions. The recorder has a request. The park districts have sent me requests. Non-for-profits. There's other people in the public that have sent things in so that this bucket exists for all just the other stuff. So we'll go into these in more detail later. Workforce, we need to really work on revitalizing the workforce, as some of the comments we heard earlier. Looking at some things that are inventive. There's some ideas on mobile job training, taking workforce training to the people. Instead of making them go to KCC, bring it to community organizations, schools, businesses, the underemployed, the lower skilled, to get them employed for those open jobs, which I think we got like 3,500 open jobs that pay more than $15 an hour, up to 16, 17, over 20 now. I mean, there's a lot of open jobs out there, but people may not know how to run a CNC lathe, or may not know how to program a PLC. It's really not rocket science. You just have to be trained on it, you know. So, and then that's your pathway to a decent living. So, but that's just one idea. A work-study program, connections to other initiatives, which are involving the trades, housing, homelessness, and mental health. So Revitalize could involve a lot of different things under the workforce that has many different areas. So the policy that would address is how do we revitalize the workforce, and programs that support that. Mr. Hunter, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under the Citizen Advisory Board, you've got Theotis, the Workforce Board, and KCC. Potential projects, you've got trades and housing and so forth. My question is, this is not etched in granite in terms of you would be amenable to accepting additional recommendations. For example,
Oh, yeah.
Steve Magruder,
Yeah.
with the building trades, Mike Smith,
Absolutely.
those kind of folks.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
These are just the folks that I've talked to already that said, yes, we want to do this. And this is the area that I think we can help. And, you know, specifically, I talked to Workforce Board and KCC and their workforce development people. They're going to be part of this on whatever way, and they're going to have ideas. And some we may be able to fund, and other ones we may not be able to. That's really up to the committees. But one thing I wanted to mention, Steve and Chris Kerner in the finance department, they're going to be part of these meetings. So we want the public, and I'm thinking of getting a whiteboard actually to put over here in the meetings. We don't want to reject any idea. It may get prioritized low because we see it as a low priority as a board, but I want the public to feel like if they have an idea, it's going to go on the board, unless it's immediately not allowable per the law. We're not going to waste time, and that's one of the reasons that we're going to have our subject matter experts on this saying, this really doesn't fly with the law. We can't spend money on it for this. And that's okay. People can have an idea, and we can tell them why we can't do it, but I still want to get every idea on the board. So if the public wants to come to public comment and say, hey, I've got 4 ideas, or if they want to email them, we'll add them to the board. We'll have to rank them, and they may not rank up at the top, or we may email them back and say, can you come in and explain what you were talking about? That's okay, you know, but, you know, it's, again, marathon, not a sprint. We don't have to decide this in a day. So I hope that makes sense the way that I'm putting that, because we want their input. Some good ideas may come out of just left field sometimes that you didn't expect, you know, so. Again, there's the names on the workforce one. Everybody's got this. It's not speak now or forever hold your peace. If you get into it and something comes up and life takes over, we can shuffle things around. Under the revitalized business, Mr. Swanson and Mr. Kinzinger, part of that in the leadership side, but obviously they're all leaders on this subcommittee. Maybe projects, we may do capped local grants for businesses that applied for but did not get PPP. That might be an idea. You can't have it be open-ended, but you can maybe say we're going to set aside X amount of dollars. That's just an idea. Federal grants and training, the worker shortage and unemployment payments. You know, how do we address that problem within that committee structure? I don't know that we're going to be able to solve it, but we might come up with something unique to Kankakee County that can combat it based on our particular strengths, the type of employment base we have, and addressing the weaknesses. So the housing market, landlords, the land bank could come into here, you know, because land banks just aren't for residential. They're also for business as well. So there might be some places where you get entrepreneurship going, you know, helping get people from that next level. Again, one thing Anita said that's absolutely true, people are dissatisfied and there's people leaving the workforce. They're resigning their jobs because they're just not happy anymore and they want to go out and start their own businesses. So I don't know if we go out and find grants to help them do that. They've got to have their own capital, obviously, but maybe we can help get them over the hump a little bit. Almost like our old revolving loan situation that we used to have at the county. To reestablish that to help entrepreneurship in the workforce. It's a thought. I'm not saying that we should at least consider all of these things. And then again, the other projects, it's the same subcommittee as the other bucket. So I figure if we do get things in here, the other committee that was part of Respond will just jump over to this, if that makes sense. And when you go reinvest, those are the right now the bigger capital areas. Potential projects, broadband, mental health, substance abuse, those are things that are going to require a lot of community partnerships. And we may move the court system under here. The reinvestment, we have a major copier printer issue within the county, and we can use money for infrastructure. We may end up putting that under reinvestment, because again, that's money we spend now that will save us money over the next 10 years on all of our copier maintenance. So I mean, there's things that we're talking about that are just not program related. We have to shore up the infrastructure of the county. People don't really, they forget that even though things got a lot better in the last 4 years financially, it was real bad for a while, and we weren't fixing anything or buying anything, and we had just started to come to that point of taking a breath, and then bam, they took $5 million away from us. So we got to figure out what our future looks like in this strange time period of having all this money, $21.3 million that we have to spend, and then losing $5 million at the same time because the state changed the laws on housing ICE detainees and making people go to other states to see their loved ones. But I can't spend this money on that. I can't spend any of this money on that because we lost that money because of the state legislature, not because of COVID. And I hope that resonates. I'm going to say it again tomorrow so people start to understand. We're going to be spending money on stuff and infrastructure and other projects while we have a severe loss of revenue, and I can't cover that off one to the other. That would be illegal, and we'll have to pay it back. So we get hit twice. Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, you guys may recall that sometimes I put some of the presenters on the spot regarding what their priorities are regarding this federal dollars we're going to be receiving. For example, and you just articulated something that I put Cavender on the spot for. He mentioned the freezers. You just articulated some duplicating Xerox machines as a need, severe need as well too. And then let me say this to you, you'll probably moonwalk on me when I pose this question to you, like Michael Jackson. But you've articulated some things, and we need to know, we're bombarded with so much stuff here, but we need to synthesize and prioritize, what our operational needs are, because we're hit with a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But we need to know, and I'm going to be redundant, candidly, what are the essential necessities? Because we need to know that, because we're being inundated with all kinds of requests, but we need to know definitively, okay, we need the freezers. I understand that because I remember and talking with Bob Gessner and Cavender, even again after that, they only got room for two bodies. And Snipes and myself couldn't probably fit in there, and you as well. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that's a definitive need that I would support. The Xerox stuff that you're talking about, that's a definitive need that we need every day. So those are just a couple of the illustrative examples of what I'm going to say, yeah, we need those. Mm-hmm. And I think we need something from you guys as to, what are the priorities. That's all I'm saying.
And that's exactly what I've asked all department heads to provide us. What are their critical infrastructure needs for their departments? And we've already started to get those from the departments.
The key word you just mentioned, critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we have to say, can we use the money on it? That's the second part of this. That's if it's infrastructure, then we can do it, and we should do it. 20 copiers is a lot of infrastructure. A good example is the uninterrupted power supply We had one go out at the jail. They're $35,000. It runs everything in the jail. If there's a surge, it all cuts off. So we have to change that because it's dying. That's critical infrastructure. Normally that would just fall to the maintenance's budget, and Wes's hair gets a little grayer, when he has to explain it. But in this case, we're going to be able to use, from what I'm identifying, and Steve would agree, the lost revenue fund on that. So that's kind of where we're going with what you're talking about, is those critical things. Is the elevator critical infrastructure? Well, I think most of it's under an insurance policy, and then the rest is tort. So I don't believe that would have to be worried about. But if that were to go out and it wasn't tort fund, then I think that's critical infrastructure to the building. But we'd have to run through the process, and it's not just me saying it. It's me and Steve and Anita and Chris sitting around talking about it. Sometimes we'll send an email to the Department of Treasury, and the answer is, refer to the rules that are online. They don't give any specificity to anything. So it's very difficult right now. But to your point, we have solicited all that information from those departments. And we've heard back from the chief judge. Critical infrastructure at the courts is a case management system for the courts that is a dinosaur that costs us at least $70,000 anytime we have to change anything with the program, because we're the only ones in Illinois who use that system. And then whenever the state of Illinois comes out with a new law, Supreme Court, that costs us 70 grand because we can't spread that cost out to all the other counties that need the upgrade. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And then it manifests with really poor work environment, workflow issues in other departments that are associated with it. So I'll just mention that. Yeah, here we go. This is the kind of the numbers where we're at right now. Please forgive me a little bit because this is fluid, but this is our latest calculations. Steve will drill down into this a little bit more, but the 21.3 million in total funds, again, half this year, half next. So year one, we've kind of figured out that the direct COVID money is $4.19 million for things that have a very specific direct COVID application. Very strict interpretation of how we can spend the money, okay? And then the lost revenue fund would be 6.48 million. We're estimating it's the same next year. They haven't come out with whether they're going to base 22 on 21's revenue or if they're going to let us look back to 19 yet. So we kind of think this is about where it's going to be. But look at it like this: restricted, less restrictive. So ARPA is very restrictive. Lost revenue is less restrictive. So that's kind of the way I want. It's better to be less restrictive. We can still spend it on COVID specific things, but it's better to have it freed up so we can do things that are a little bit different. Yes, sir. Mr. Kinzinger.
A dumb question, but I don't understand the chart. 4.19 million, 6.48 million, they're kind of duplicated twice, and we have 21.3 million, two tranches. So basically, what are you telling me there? I've got all 21 million spent.
Yeah, that's well, we haven't allocated anything to those buckets at all.
Okay.
So that's just how much is in each one per year.
And then we're going to take that money and put it in those different.
Yeah, we'll figure out, and we're actually going to have at this point, I think it's best we have a separate website that just a couple of pages that lists what we're spending each bucket on. So if, let's just say, the COVID incentive, yeah, I like that better than bounty, COVID incentive program. If we are able to say we're gonna put 50 grand in there, that's a ARPA expense, that's not infrastructure. So that's a direct, we would take it out of that 4.19 bucket. But if it was a vehicle to go out and give people vaccinations, or that could be used on other things also, then it may go into lost revenue because there's not just COVID, we could use it for other things as well. Education, DUI, opioid training, not how to, how not to, so it's that whole thing. So again, we have to be purposeful on how we look at it on the subcommittee level and know that we still have cash flow. We still only have the 10.6 roughly each year to spend, and it's divided up into two buckets. So there is some financial planning involved. That's why it's that way. And by the way, those are already basically budgeted. We have those buckets sitting out there ready to go. So Any more questions about that? There will be a better way to display this once we get firm final numbers, but this looks pretty close to where we're gonna be. Steve, anything? McCarty? In finance, he'll have a lot more on this, and he'll probably debunk half of what I just said, so.
I mean, this can be confusing, but we're laying it out from what we know, so that it literally all can be used, as the chairman said. I just want to reiterate, it all can be used towards a COVID purpose. Like he said, the ARPA funds are very, they're quite restrictive, and then the lost revenue still has restrictions, but has infrastructure and other things that the county board can decide to use it on, but all of it can still be used for ARPA. So just because we move it doesn't mean it takes it away from any COVID use. It just becomes more flexible, if you will, not free, but more flexible than the ARPA fund. So if either of these, we have two funds, we've already had the budget, the board has voted on both of these. If any money left over in either of these buckets, it goes back to the treasury. Well, we have it set up that, so depending on how all this flows, over the next couple of years, we have it laid out so we can identify it exactly, what transacts. So if that's confusing, we'll help you through that. The most important thing is, for the committees to just take a look at, all the requests and everything, and then, we can help sort it out, behind the scenes.
It's not an easy process either.
It is not easy. No. And it's not very clear, to be honest. It's getting clear, but it's still quite unclear, as far as very specifics. When you have a specific need, a specific project, a good angle to it, we're not getting a lot of direct response help at this point yet.
All right. Mr. Fairfield, yes.
On the FY 2021 and 22, if we don't spend all the money in 2021, will we be able to spend that the next year?
It just goes to the next year. Okay. Yeah. Yep. And we could be making plans in 21 for money that has to be spent, or we're planning on spending in, well, really 24, because you do have until, was it the end of 24? But you have to have the money allocated. No, 26 is the project time. Yeah, so we could have a project that we know is going to actually be completed 26, but we have to actually allocate that money by the end of 24. That's the way that works. So sometimes it's a little bit longer based on the nature of the project. So, anybody else? Questions, concerns? A lot of us, and this could be fluid. Like, we could get into this and say, okay, we need to tweak something here to make it easier. So I just tried to come up with something that allowed for as much freedom and public input as possible when we're actually operating backwards on this. It usually doesn't happen this way. It's just the opposite of the way you normally plan in business. So, okay, well, moving on, I guess. The next slide, we just covered this a little bit. I just want to reiterate, the covering payroll and benefits for public safety and public health employees is more restrictive than what was allowed under the CARES Act, okay? So the payroll and covered benefits expenses for the county public safety, public health, healthcare, human services, to the extent that their services are devoted to mitigating or responding to the COVID-19 public health emergency, and the employee's time that is dedicated to responding to the public health emergency. I just can't use it for all public safety, all courts, all health department. It has to be ones for people that are dedicated just towards health. Okay, that's why I say I can't use this money on what we lost, okay? But, at some point I'm talking to Steve, but maybe medical staff qualifies under those auspices, so, and we think it does. Yes, sir.
It may not be germane to this, but it just popped. The 21.6 split up into 2 years. Now, can you speak to us in terms of other pots of money that we could pursue with our grant writers and stuff? Because it's not just limited, and we're going to be able to get more than the 21.6. That's just one thing. But our grant writers may be able to go after some other funds as well too.
Yeah, that's a big part of this, actually, is I really wanted us to become the hub of knowledge on the grants, and I'm still pushing for that. I got a call with
Genera?
Congresswoman Kelly's office and the US EDA to try to start fleshing through some of these using local examples of needs that we have now, but use that as a fact-finding mission to find out what's out there, what's COVID related from the EDA nationally for economic development and workforce training that we may be able to apply for here locally. So it's I'm using a local situation that I'm working on to learn more about what's there. So to that point, and actually there'll be another answer coming at the next slide. So let me, after this next slide, excuse me. So again, counties may use fiscal recovery funds for the provision of government services to the extent of reduction in revenue experienced in COVID-19. That's where we get the separate bucket of money that's lost revenue. Extent the reduction in revenue experienced during COVID-19. I have to draw that distinction. The state of Illinois changing their law is not a COVID-19 reason. So I can't say what is at threat with that. I have to become inventive. We have to become inventive. We have to look at revenue. We have to look at efficiencies. We have a lot of work to do on that. So just because we have this, it doesn't mean we don't have this problem. Okay? I have to keep saying that over and over again. And we'll address it. We'll figure it out. Confident. So again, the overarching ground rules as practicable. These are some suggestions that I think that maybe we should adopt on the overall level would help guide us, and maybe others that go with it. And maybe executive committee next month can look at these and say these are overarching principles, or some version of these, or get rid of them altogether. Your call. As practicable, and deploy 2 years of ARPA funds on initiatives that have a long-term 10-20 year impact. Where applicable, utilize special internal funds before ARPA funds. Access grant funds instead of ARPA funds when possible. That should always be one of the first steps. If somebody comes to us and says, hey, I need money for, like, I don't know, childcare, well, there's grants out there for it, or restaurants. There's all that restaurant money and hospitality money. Did you apply for that? Yes, I was rejected. Okay, well, what do we do for those people that didn't get it for a particular reason? We have to address that. We have to be able to figure out what it is that we can do, and maybe if they didn't apply, well, then we kind of show them how to apply, and if they don't, well, then they're not eligible for what we do. I don't know. That's up to the committees to decide. So, and then identify and support communities that were ineligible to participate in CURES, PPP, CARES programs. Those might be overarching things that cover all the committees. These are principles that we're doing in this process, and maybe there's others. Maybe there's not. Your guys' call. Everybody will be part of this. So I know we handle questions, but is there anything specific about this? It's like drinking from a fire hose, man. I'm telling you. Once we had what it was, now we got to get to work.
Hey, Ron. Commitment.
So I'm thinking.
Commitment.
And your feedback is important here too. We got to start meeting with these subcommittees. And I'm wondering, it seems to me that it would be, I could do them after board meetings that we have here, if the board wants us to do that. And we could take them individually by the committees that you're on, or we could do them at 1 in the afternoon on off days of the week. I don't know how this works for everybody, because obviously there's other commitments, things going on in this room and other places. So we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna do this and the cadence of this. So if you have a thought right now, let me know. If you don't, maybe think on it. Shoot me an email, give me a phone call. I mean, is there any initial thoughts, Mr. Lear?
Oh, one thought, just, Mr. Chairman. Maybe you should encourage the members of each committee to gather, because they may have different kind of restrictions and opportunities in terms of what would be best to meet. So maybe you should encourage communication between the people that are going to be on a subcommittee, because there might be different choices for subcommittees.
Sure. It's a good idea. And realize they're going to be here and broadcast. They're going to be on. This is working in front of the public. So, obviously that's an important part of this. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, is there going to be some kind of problems with getting public input if we have it during the day? I mean, are people that are the medical people or whoever we need to get to be on those committees, are they going to be able to take off during the day and come to a meeting, or are we going to have them in the evening?
No, most people said they can get here for the meetings that I've talked to, but, and there may be one-offs where they can't, or they send their representative.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so for the most part, people can get here during the day because that's when they're working anyway, and that's, the subject matter experts are in the field that we need them for. So that's kind of maybe part of their job.
Yeah.
I worry about us, you know, to be honest, about what day's gonna work with everybody else, because our meetings are usually 9 in the morning on set days of the week. This is a little bit new, and we may have to meet a few times to get policy down, and then that committee may go to bed for a little while, and they don't have to meet again until finance does their thing. Does that make sense? So there may be a flurry of work up on the front end, and then it may get a little sleepy for a while until you start meeting again with more public ideas. I'm thinking people can email things to the committees. I will, on the website that we're gonna do, I wanted to submit an idea, submit a project, submit an initiative, whatever we wanna call it, and then I'll get fed into the committee structure, you know. Anything is, there are no bad ideas. There may be things that just don't make the cut, or things that are ineligible for, based on the rules that we operate under.
And then,
Yes, sir.
sorry, you'll be the controller on all this. You're gonna be the,
Well, I'll be the organizer.
okay, but I mean air traffic control guy, you know, you're gonna tell,
Jasmine's gonna have a big role in this as well. She's gonna be in charge of the inter-community or committee communications. Because if you're on courts, you're gonna wanna know what's going on over at the other committees. And so what I envision is wrap-ups that she provides, communications between the committees, maybe short, you know, examples of what's going on. But then also with what's going on in Kankakee and in Bradley and in Bourbonnais, we've got to connect to them. And if they have an idea and then we have the same idea from a different angle, why wouldn't we try to do this together? If we have to impact the whole county. Kankakee has to impact just Kankakee. But they would love partners in that.
Yeah, you got to.
You know, because there may be things that are critical to both of us. And that's where the public safety court system, where Kankakee and the county are connected. You know, we talk about 80%. That, you know, that's 80% of our budget, our expense and our spend is on the courts and public safety and all of that stuff. Well, that's about 80% of the court system, maybe a little bit less, but it's heavily slanted towards Kankakee.
Yeah.
You know, so if we can address problems there, it impacts the whole county. Yeah. It's in the best interest to care about Kankakee. I keep telling people that all the time. So it impacts every town in this county. So, is there anybody else? Yes, Mr. Long. Let me, 5, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So how soon will we be seeing the questionnaires that you sent out? And can we, as a committee, have those people appear in front of us for an explanation?
Yes, absolutely. And that is preferable. We'd love to have them come in and present what they're thinking on. I've got the 5, saved every request that's coming in, and we'll have to start going through them as a committee, much like you do here. You get a packet, here's what's, you know, coming in, and then we just come in the room and start talking about it, and we invite that person in who's made the request, whether they're department heads or somebody from the public.
So the Open Meetings Act things all apply, and we have to supply an agenda?
Yes.
Is it a loose agenda so we can explore the comments of the people that come in?
Yeah, it will have it so you could vote on something if you wanted to. But realize the first agendas are going to be all about policy. Those are the first ones that you're going to kind of come in, and you may have a list of all the different suggestions, if you will, but then you'll say, well, what is the overarching policy? What do we need to do with public safety? The sheriff will be, he has his comments, obviously. You know, from an emergency management perspective, there's some shortcomings. I've heard from the hospitals on that. You know, I asked them much like after the train wreck, I think I mentioned this before, you know, they looked at that situation about, well, how could we have responded better to that? I think I used that example. Well, they all met and figured out they needed a common communication system. Well, that's what I asked the hospitals. What if this happened again, what could we do better? Because obviously nobody knew how to deal with this in the first time. And they said, well, you need some type of mobile capacity to get out and do rapid testing. Because before we knew we had a problem at Shapiro, but we couldn't get there to do the rapid testing. There was no apparatus, no vehicle literally to go do it. And so maybe we address that, and that's why I brought it up earlier. So that's a thing that would support an overall arching policy that emergency management needs to be prepared to deal with a pandemic or other similar situations going forward. is the motorhome that's out there now sufficient, or do we need something else to supplant that? That's a discussion, but the policy would be to make sure emergency management is up to the challenge. And then whatever else it needs to be. So I don't want to say this out loud, but I think I might have to. We might have to meet a couple times a month just to get the ball rolling and get policy done, you know? But it's just what it is. But after that, it may slow down a little bit. Then the work takes over from the finance committee when you really start ranking stuff and funding them. Because like with the court system, here's a good example. We may say, yes, we need a new case management system for the courts. That's a long process to get to a number on what that is. That's a RFP, RFQ, you know, you meet with the vendors, you meet with, and then you kind of pick one, then you figure out how much it's gonna cost, okay? Because it has to do what you want it to do, rather than you're not going towards a number, because you always get what you pay for. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thinking outside the box. When you think in terms of CSL Bearing and the new project that's gonna go at the old Kinky Federal Building, do we ever interface with any of the industries regarding community benefits? For example, Armstrong at one point put together about 100 people to go and redo Pioneer Park. What kind of relationships do we have that would lend itself to them buying into what we're trying to do as well? That's something to think about.
Sure, we do have the relationships, and I don't have an immediate answer. I know they individually do things for the community. You know, I see CSL's name on a lot of different stuff these days. Yeah, it's a good one. I don't know who that point of contact. I know the Alliance works with them a lot, and they have those contacts via workforce development, site visits, and all that. Maybe it's I don't even know if they have a manufacturers roundtable locally anymore. We did have one for a while there. Steve, have you heard anything about that in a while? We used to meet years ago, but I don't know if that's still the case. Good question, though. We'll figure that out. Yes, sir, Mr. Kinzinger.
Thank you. I'd like to go back on something that Steve mentioned earlier, but it seems like this is a multi-pronged approach, and I would like to reiterate Steve's comment that the people who are full-time thinkers in the Kankakee County need to come up with a ranked priority system where all of us part-time thinkers are going to run around, spend a lot of time doing things that aren't important. So I would like to see the full-time thinkers that we've employed, and we have some very good people, do a preliminary rank in terms of what's important in our county that will go beyond 2025 and will be self-sustaining or something. But we need full-time thinkers in this to at least get us started in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah. And I hope Mr. Kinzinger, I hope I've impressed upon those folks.
I think you have,
yeah,
yes.
You got to start supplying me what, I didn't tell the hospitals what I thought we needed, I asked them.
Yes.
And it's the same way with the court systems and everybody else. And I really think we've gotten a good response but I think we need more.
I thought Steve did an excellent job of hitting it. I just want to ram it home.
Yeah. It is important, you know, because my part-time thinking is done after this meeting, so.
Forget your birthday.
So I guess I don't really have anything else as far as that goes. We're going to discuss more things tomorrow, but if you're on finance, I apologize. You'll hear a lot of this again. But I had to make sure everybody heard it because there's a role that every board member can play and should play. Just it depends on what your own personal constraints are and time commitments and availabilities. Because it is a lot more meetings than what you signed up for, but this has never happened, and I wouldn't say it's going to happen again. So we're going to make sure we do as the best we can. All right? Well, is there any new or old business to come before the committee? Mr. Featherly.
Motion to adjourn.
Could you say that into the microphone, please?
I'd like to move we adjourn.
Yeah, there's a motion to adjourn. I apologize.
Sorry, that's right.
Wishful thinking. How about a motion to go into executive session?
I make that motion.
Is there a second on that? This shouldn't take too long. Mr. Fairfield. I need a roll call.
You and Dr. Burns have the best opinions.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Ms. Polk,
Aye.
Ms. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield, Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter, Mr. Wheeler,
Aye.
Mr. Searay. Motion carries.
All right, be just a minute. We'll get things changed over. All right, we are back from executive session. All board members are present that were in executive session. And Mr. Featherling had something. Did you had a poem for today? I think you were, what was
Yeah.
it?
I made a motion to adjourn.
Oh, was there a second to that motion? Mr. Long, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Good day.